Howdy of you delicious people. I'm here today to shoot 'em up. So, I'm here to review that film, Shoot 'em Up. Really, here's the first time that I've ever seen an action film where the first time around when I was watching this movie, I was laughing my whole way through. Just because I thought that this movie was so absurd and so comedic, and as well as its characters just possibly really having fun in this movie. We end up having a kind of vigilante character who seems like a kind of Punisher-esque like character, who is to be, of course, a guy they just call Smith here. We never really know his actual name, and we never will. We also have a villain named Hertz that, of course, is to be desperately going after this woman, and then when that is to fail, he is to desperately try to go after a baby, all because of a Senator Rutledge who is to desperately need this baby. Weirdly, right? Very odd story, but a very fun movie. We also have this Hammerson gun company that's involved in this story that is technically tied to Hertz. And eventually we also have really just Smith teaming up with a lady named Donna, who is to basically be a lady of the night, who is to be able to milk herself, so to speak, so that way this child can get nourishment at some point, and Smith is fitting the bill at some point for this woman, or either that, or he's fitting the bill by falling in love with her. So I really find this movie to, like I said, it's a fun, great film. We have a lot of intelligent, fun things here. We have Hertz, who's to be written as at first, an FBI profiler, but he's not that. He's this behavioral analyst, consultant, something or other, and basically a profiler. So, unless I've said that somewhere wrong, but I think the funnest scene is when we have basically both Smith and Donna in the throes of passion to all of a sudden be in the throes of gunfire, as well as us just having this opening sequence where this guy is going and shooting through all these men, and all these bullets are bouncing off this pregnant woman's belly as she is in the midst of giving birth. And I am just this is a crazy film. This is a crazy banana film, and I have fun with it. And at any point, if anything is to seem like there is to be some kind of harsh doings with a baby, really, we find out the exact opposite, that they wouldn't have gone on and done this film to make it look like they are doing harm to a child, because eventually they'll showcase what this child is to really be at some points. Because we have a lot of times where we have to CGI in the baby's face, which just seems kind of weird in this film, that they couldn't have just I would have been okay with this kind of toy baby the whole time, as long as they could kind of get it as realistic as possible, because I can barely tell when there's actually a real baby present and when there's the fake baby. But every once in a while, when it's really close up shot, then I can tell. But anyways, yeah, we have this guy who is a carrot wielding guy who is to slide his way or otherwise shoot through a ton of people. numerous guys to where they have to go on and mention, like, man, do you even want to know how many people that of ours that he's killed? And Hertz is just like, I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to have that massive drop in IQ. So no, thank you. Um, so hopefully I will be able to remember most of this film, or I might have to go back to certain parts because there's not a lot of like easy transitions for every single thing in this movie. But I hope I'm going to be able to eventually comb through most of this film when I get into spoilers. So, what would I go out of my way to grade this film? Where could you go out of your way to find this film? Well, currently, at the second this recording, this movie right here is to be on an app called Tubi, Tubi. It's a app that, in fact, has a ton of films that are very, retro or probably somewhat close to current. Like, they don't have like a new release kind of thing on there, but you'd be surprised what otherwise would be on Tubi compared to anything else. You could possibly see a movie like Double Dragon, which I really enjoy and like. You could go on to see the movie, the Stone Cold Steve Austin movie, The Condemned, right now on Tubi, because I looked it up because I was wanting to go and see that film and kind of go back into that again. And maybe sometime soon I might talk about that simply because I enjoy that film. You could probably find like very random cartoonish, anime-ish like things compared to a lot of other apps. But there, in fact, you could also go on to a number of other apps that I've kind of conveniently listed on almost any other app that I've dare in fact, or almost any other video that I've gone on and said. So, like, if you don't conveniently want to find this on Tubi, you can go on to find this on two other apps that I've mentioned a cluster of times through any other video. Just click one, and there'll be a whole list of apps that you can use instead. Tubi is free. Tubi, I think you might have to just log in with like a Google account or something. But after that, like every single thing is free. There's no fees. There's no really. There's just ads. There's an ad break, but the app is free. So, with that said, let's grading system. I would say I have a ton of fun with this movie. I can always enjoy this film. I've watched it more than once now. I think I've watched this twice, but it was a long time ago when I first watched this film, and I just stumbled upon it because I'm like, shoot 'em up, what is this? I think it's around the time where I watched Sin City for the first time, and that was a really long time ago. And when I watched Sin City, I all of a sudden found this film. I'm like, what the heck is this film? And then I went into it. I'm like, oh my god, this is hilarious. This is fun. People might not find this movie to be funny. Like, people may not get the sense of humor that this movie's to go into, or people may not overall enjoy this at some point in time. But, to each their own. To each their own. So, with that said, my grading for this is probably gotta be, like, I would say I want to say great film because it's fun. Like, I want to say good to great, kind of like somewhere ballparking layer. So, like, definitely go ahead and check it out. It's a plus side film, but a lot of people have different reactions upon this film. There might be something that you dare in fact may be like, I didn't like this movie, and that's okay, because I'm going to go out of my way to spoil it anyways. So let's go out of our way to go into that double 5 time territory, because it's about that time yet again to go into this thing called Shoot 'em Up and go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you do spoil this episode. Phew, 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 phew. Shoot 'em up. Anyways, so the very beginning of this film, we of course have a man who's sitting on a bench who is to be called Smith, who's kind of dipping his carrot in his coffee, question mark. Like, I don't know what the actual drink was. I'm assuming it's a coffee. It would seem like a coffee. It doesn't really matter. To all of a sudden have this woman in yellow just be running off, screaming and hollering, and desperately kind of going to see some cafe and try to bang, help me, help me, and she's running off as this guy is running behind her. There are very few actually cast names on here, so I didn't even have the phone present on me to go through the cast list, because the cast list is very short. And if by some reason I just so happen to forget any cast member's name and whatever, my apologies, but there's so very few of them that I didn't think it would be bothering for me to even go through the cast list on this movie, because it's easy. I pretty much said every single cast member within the cryptic sense of this film. So we have Smith, who of course is to go on and is to of course see this guy chasing after this woman, so he thought it would be the good thing to do to go and chase after this man who is chasing after this woman. All of a sudden, we now have Smith, who doesn't have a gun to his name, because of course he doesn't, because he is to be a man that like just doesn't like carry one on him. Like he didn't think he would be going through an action sequence today. So we end up having Smith, who goes and rams a carrot through this guy's mouth to end up having it coming out through the other back of his head. And he's like, eat your vegetables, as this guy falls over. So now this woman is mentioning that she's having contractions, she's going into labor. It must be the stress of this whole running around moment and fearing for her life is basically forcing this baby to come out early, as this guy was to go and grab this knife to want to perform this C-section. So, of course, we have Smith, who ends up grabbing a gun from this goon, because there is going to be a number of goons lining up to want to come after this woman. So we end up having Smith, who is kind of over by the woman, just kind of going through and shooting up some of these men. And eventually he is to see a guy with a ponytail at some point, and Smith is like, you know what I hate? Guys in their 40s wearing a ponytail. Pow! And he shoots them. So we have, of course, Smith going and shooting this gun, and all these bullets are just bouncing off this woman's belly, while, of course, she is giving birth to this child. And so when the child is to be coming out, we end up having, of course, Smith weirdly shooting off the umbilical cord because he has no pair of scissors, and the woman's like, oh my god, and he's like here's your child. But before that, we end up having Smith, who is to go on and try to shoot these goons, and so we end up having him firing on this one oil this one kind of like oil container of sorts that is kind of spilling out oil. And so Smith goes through and slides all the way through a severely long stretch of oil that he slipped into to continue to just slide through these areas, shoot all of these goons, even to one point where he's shooting this gun, and it is to open up this bookshelf and hit this guy in the head and knock him out. And so Smith is just gun blazing through all of these guys and doing it in hilarious fashion, where especially that whole oil slick thing where he just keeps on sliding seemingly forever, and it doesn't make justifiable sense for how long this guy is stretching to. We also have at one point where Smith is going and purposely breaking this table so that way um, he can run up on this table, crash through this one window to crash through the other window to eventually find 5 or 6 goons that are going and trying to hide from him, so that way he can shoot them all and murder them all and kill them all. So now back at Smith going and shooting the umbilical cord to, of course, give this baby to his mother, because Wang. So, because they end up calling him Oliver later on in the film, so I guess that's another IMDb credit, right? Supposedly there's 3 different Oliver babies in this movie, I guess. Like, makes a lot of sense to just conveniently have a lot of babies to use for this film for whatever reason. So, we of course end up having this woman who her baby is crying, and so immediately we have Smith who's telling this mother, it's like, well, hey, your baby needs a meal. So he like rips open her dress and basically has her just go right away to start feeding this baby. So we go further on into this part here where we start to have Smith run out of bullets. And so he's in this kind of, instead of being in the stairway, he's kind of in this other room. And so all of a sudden we have Hertz kind of running in to try to get to this baby. And Smith is to disarm this guy and to take his gun from him. And so now we have Hertz going and doing this whole speech, this whole like kind of limerick of sorts, where it's like a rhyming limerick like thing where he's going on and saying that there were these 3 kids and one of them was named Tat. And so we have this story go on where these 3 kids and this wife who is going and feeding all of these kids through her own means. And so she's to say that all of the feeding was very difficult and that eventually she realized that there was no tit for tat. So, and we keep saying that name, that the whole last saying, like, consistently here. The whole, like, tat thing. So, so, like, it was kind of a funny way to introduce this character. And so Hertz is also to mention to Smith that Smith is not going to be able to fire this gun because unfortunately he does not have Hertz's thumbprint, so he won't be able to fire this gun. So eventually we have it where we really just have Hertz just kind of see like Smith kind of run off here, grab this woman, and so Hertz is going and grabbing a gun and going off and trying to shoot either Smith or this woman, and he ends up clipping the head of this woman, and now she is dead. And so Smith is going and grab the baby and try to go off to this rooftop where, of course, he is to eventually get this gun here and go off and start shooting these letters on this this kind of sign here. Eventually, these guys are to just be kind of like, whoa, whoa, they're kind of blocking the bullets, and eventually some of them are to get shot. And so eventually, by the time everybody starts getting it through here, and eventually Hertz is to realize that Smith is kind of gone here, all of a sudden we end up having this sign that says F you Tool, and so Hertz is to go on and shoot the L off Tool, and so Smith is to go back and hear Hertz saying that whole like tit for tat kind of thing, to eventually see that the sign now says F you too. So, kind of like a funny, like, kind of play on things. It was kind of a funny reveal here. So, Smith is eventually to run off with this baby. And so, when Smith is to make his way to still having this gun on him, we seem to have Smith having a sigh of relief here, and so we then have him go on to go into this bathroom to all of a sudden have this agent continue to follow him. Some lone man, some lone gunman that I guess was in that was the IMDb page where it says like he's the lone man, he's the lone gunman. Like they don't have him as like Agent Hula Hoo because he technically works for Senator the senator, and so we go on and we have, of course, now Smith going into the bathroom, kind of gearing up for this agent to come on in, and he then like places the baby on one of the like on kind of the back part of this toilet because he's kind of he had some kind of like sheets and stuff like that. He's covered up pretty well. So all of a sudden we have Smith getting ready for this lone gunman, this agent to come in, just for Smith to go on and drop this gun in this toilet that's filled with urine. And so Smith has to now get out, go onto this little cleaning station, go and try to clean his gun, still waiting for this guy to appear. And so then he goes right back into the toilet stall and he's just kind of waiting it out, and his gun still won't fire. So this agent, I'm going to call him agent, not lone man, lone gunman, whatever stupid thing that I'm going to call him agent because that makes a lot more sense. He looks like an agent, even though he may not actually be. So this agent comes in and is to go on and try to shoot all the stalls, thinking that, of course, Smith has to be in one of these. And so Smith goes and slides from one bathroom stall all the way to the other and is to go on and try to shoot this agent. But then eventually we have Smith who goes on and is to use this carrot to turn out the lights. And so now this like agent doesn't know where exactly to fire. And so Smith is to go on and shoot the bathroom door so that way a light can come in and shine seemingly on this one of the like the blowers, like the hand blowers. And so both Smith and agent they're kind of battling it out. And so what happens here is we weirdly have Smith who's taking this guy's hand and pushing it very close to the blower because I guess it shows that it's very, very hot. And so this guy is to drop his gun. And so we eventually end up having them still rustling over Smith's gun. And then Smith goes on and is to kind of warm up his gun so that way his gun can fire. And so we end up having these guys fighting it out, and this agent does not die here. He just kind of eventually gets knocked out here. And then Smith is to go off to collect this baby and get the heck out of here. So Smith is to go on to make it, of course, to this this lady of the night that, of course, he knows. And we, of course, have also that then now Hertz is going and collecting his men, and one of the guys is to, of course, get shot in the butt. And so now we have Hertz having this guy who got shot in the butt like explain what has gone on here. And so this guy eventually goes on and explains a story about how the guy uh, was to be this guy out of nowhere who just came in and started helping this woman and just took all of us out. And so Hertz goes on and shoots the guy in the other cheek for like his trouble. And so we go on and have Hertz going and collecting this woman's body because he's like, hey, uh, I wanna do my part here. Like, I'm not just some evildoer that like won't get his hands dirty. So we go on and we of course have Hertz who's like, well, as they're going and burying the dead bodies, we have, of course, Hertz who's kind of touching this woman while, of course, she's dead, and he realizes at the kind of the tip of things that is like, that's milk. Like, So we now have Hertz who is to realize that they need to go on and call any woman, any nursing woman, so to speak, and like figure out any woman that is to be kind of churning out her own milk, so to speak. But we also have eventually where Hertz at some point is to be having dialogue with his wife over the phone because I guess it's his 8-year-old son Timmy's birthday today. And so we of course have Hertz who's mentioning to the guys, it's like, well, hey, like, what's the difference between a gun and a woman? And they're like, what? It's like, you can put a silencer on a gun. Oh, what a joke. So we end up having a tour, of course. Smith is to go on and is to have this baby and make it to this lady who is to be in the midst of doing a job, so to speak. And so Smith is now going and talking to Donna. And so Smith is going on and asking Donna, like, hey, I'm going to give you a wad of money that is supposedly like $5,000, which actually isn't really $5,000. It's just a roll that looks like $5,000. And so Smith is to say, it's like, well, hey, like, you go and you nurse this kid for however long, and for like at least keep him for a day so I can figure all this out. And Donna's like, no, like, this is yours, Dad. So paraphrasing here, letting everybody know, not doing it word for word, because some words, but not all the words. So we now, of course, have Smith, who is to go on and where does he transition next? So I want to say it's the pawn shop, but I think that happens after this. I'm trying to figure out where exactly we all easily transition to. Let's make this easy. So Hertz eventually makes his way back to, of course, Donna here to eventually say that, like, hey, you had a guy here with a baby, and so tell me where he is, tell me who he is. And so Donna is to, of course, tell this guy nothing. And so we have Hertz who goes on and starts shooting all these baby bottles that she has. And he's saying every single time that at the end of his gun, uh, he fires a bullet, like it's to have the end of the gun very hot. So he goes on and he kind of scorches her thigh to just kind of tell her, like, okay, like, you're going to tell me, right? So then she doesn't really know. He keeps on doing this over and over and over again. So we then have it where Smith comes back before Hertz is to go and put this gun basically in this woman's vajayjay. So Smith goes on and is to have a gun pointed at, of course, uh, Hertz here, and it's one of Hertz Goon's gun, Goon's gun. So we have Hertz who's going on and mentioning it's like, well, hey, like the gun that you had, like it's out, and Smith is like, well, your gun is out too. You fired 6 shots. And so Hertz is like, well, you fired 9, and so you're out. So what ends up happening here is that Smith is to conveniently have one of Hertz's goons' guns that has to get finger activated. And so what happens here is that Smith is to kind of grab Hertz and kind of shove him out this door. And so now we have Smith that is to showcase that he has a hand from one of Hertz's henchmen, like I'm sure one of the rando guys. And Hertz is to, of course, have like 2 riding buddies with him. And so we go on here and we have Hertz who's kind of running down this hallway, I believe with this like axe or some kind of weapon of sorts, kind of chasing down Smith before he is to shoot this gun. And so Smith is to go off and shoot this gun and shoot shoot Hertz in the chest. Getting names confused now. That's great. So Hertz falls over, and we naturally assume that he's dead, to otherwise find out that he has a bulletproof vest. And of course, he's not dead. Funny enough, like this movie, in some kind of like parts of me, feels like if the movie The Last Dragon was a an action movie instead of a like a martial arts film, like that, kind of the way they shoot this and the way they do these camera angles, it kind of looks like the Last Dragon weirdly to me. Like everybody knows like possibly The Last Dragon movie if you've never even seen it. It's a movie with like Sho'nuff and who's the master, Sho'nuff, and like all that jazz. That movie. We have the you got that glow. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty good. So we now have Smith who's taking Donna with him to just be like, yeah, you're coming with me because you're going to end up dead if you're not with me. So we, of course, go on and have both Smith and Donna who are going to this pawn shop. And so Smith is desperately going to this pawn shop trying to get bullets, and he barely has any money, but he has certain checks from the blood bank. And the pawn shop lady is like, well, hey, like, if you give me the check from the sperm bank, then I'll definitely go and loan you out all these bullets. And so Smith is like, well, I don't get that check till Wednesday. And so the lady's like, well, hey, like, I'll hold all this money and then you can pay me back on Wednesday when you get that other check. And he's like, okay, great. So all of a sudden, Donna is in this dark alley somewhere blowing some guy. And so Smith is to go and find this baby in this bag like he was. And all kind of like having this kind of uh, like protective kind of packaging all around him. So we have Smith who's kind of slamming the fingers of this guy through this dumpster, and so he runs off. And so Donna's like, well, hey, like I wanted to pay or I wanted to get some money for this kid, because Donna was to go off and get this kid a bulletproof vest, supposedly uh, the most like effective gift that you could give a kid, I guess, is a bulletproof vest, which eventually changes into some backpack later on. So, what did they really do with this bulletproof vest? So, we go on, and we, of course, have both um, Smith and Donna make their way to Smith's place, which is basically this kind of abandoned home that kind of looks kind of disheveled and whatever, and he has to go and have this like secret weird uh, brick thing that is to open this door. Evidently, this brick and this mouse maze, weird looking thing that is to go and open this door. It looks so weird, but we also had that one scene where both Smith and Donna were driving out, and so it's kind of funny because Smith throughout this movie is to tell people things that he hates. And so we have it where at one of the driving parts we have Smith who is noticing a guy who is never using his blinker and just consistently carving through traffic and just kind of blazing through everybody. And so Smith is like, you know what I hate? Like guys who don't use their blinker. It's like one little click of a move and like they just can't do it. It's too hard. And so we have Smith just kind of carving through and following this guy. And so it just gets to the point where this guy also goes and litters. And so Smith is like, I can't take this guy anymore. So Smith goes and crashes this guy's car into some other car. And Donna's kind of like, well, hey, like, did you work that out? Like, are you good now? Like, good God. Like, he's gonna kill somebody just because of the one thing that he hates. So we go on here and we have both Smith and Donna, who are, of course, going on and figuring out what this baby likes. Because it seems that this kid, when they go through the TV and they're hearing kind of the senator kind of speak out here, and they're trying to figure out like what the heck is going on. Why do they need this baby so badly? Dot 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 dot. So we also have Smith, who realizes that it seems like all these hurt guys at some point are to have these guns that are to be these guns that people should not have yet, that they seem to be like the newest, latest model that no one should really have. And so Smith makes that consensus that it seems like these hurt guys are to be working with a company called Hammerson. So, but we go on and have them flipping through the TV, and all of a sudden we have this kind of like really heavy death metal music going on. And so all of a sudden this kid who is to now be having these like newspaper diapers, and eventually the one of the newspapers is have the picture of the senator, and they're kind of putting it together that it has to have something to do with the senator who is in desperate need of some bone marrow transplant, but that happens somewhere later down the road. Uh, we find out that this kid is to love death metal. Like, he is to be so comforted, and so they must realize that there is some heavy metal club that is, of course, to be down the road right after this. So we go on, and we, of course, have this baby who I guess is to be comforted by the look of a gun. And so Smith is kind of showing this gun to this kid because he's like, yeah. And so, like, Smith is like explaining this gun to this kid. And, like, we have, I guess, weirdly, Smith being a good dad, weirdly, if he is to really be a dad here. So, and I know that was like that whole scene there was a whole like a random bag of events that were to kind of be twisted and tied together, untwisted and then retwisted again to like, oh, here's the resolution, because try to be consistent with all the stuff that goes on in this film. So we have it where Hertz with his two men are going through these certain kind of streets, and Hertz is to see a car that has a window broken, and he's like, stop here, like, I know this guy had came here. And they're like, come on, man, like, I'm sure, like, there's no way for you to really know that. And Hertz is like, I know, like, believe me, I know, because I read the script. No, that's not how far they go here, but like, we have this guy who is to know, like, the behavior of this guy and know he's going to go this direction. So Hertz goes to this pawn shop person and is to, of course, ask if these people were here, and they would be correct with that. So now Hertz is to also conveniently find where this guy hangs his hat, because he obviously is to think, well, there's only one place that this guy would go, and it would, of course, be here. And so now we have Hertz going on and like picking the lock to get into this place. We have like Smith and Donna, where we see like Smith having this huge cluster of gardened carrots, because this guy doesn't really have a dollar to his name, really, but it seems like he does. And he's kind of pulling all these levers to turn on all these lights weirdly. Heaven forbid we have this guy do anything normal. So we have the guys saying that the real reason why Hertz is as smart as he is because he's a FBI profiler, and he's like, no, like, I'm a federal behavioral analysis consultant or something like that. And so they're like, okay, sure. So we now go on, and we have Hertz that's kind of waiting for all these men to come on in. And so Hertz is going through and trying to figure out which like birthday card to give his son, because he's 8 years old. And so he's going through this one little cute kid's card, and then he's also going through this one where it's be this like hot bathing suit woman. And so he's like, well, hey, should I give him the cute one, or should I give him the one where it's like you're becoming a man kind of card? And so we end up having him doing the like you're becoming the man card. So he goes on and he tells everybody once they're all collected there, he's like, well, hey, like, this is going to be like a Cagney movie where, like, or I hope this is not going to be some Cagney movie where the hero, like, gets away at the end, because if that is to happen, I'm going to get a little bit more than my money back. Like, saying that I guess if he was a person to go into a theater and, like, see this kind of movie where the hero gets away in the end, then, like, he would go and want a refund. Like, no, like, I want to see the villain win this story. Wouldn't that be weird if you were a person that consistently tried to get a refund in a theater for a movie? Like, I think for me, there are people like that that do exist, and if you are that person, it's like you probably should have known how garbage a film was. Like, I can understand if you're having like film problems. Like, there's some times where I've been in a movie and I didn't get the best like cut of it. Like, I went to a like Transformers movie late at night once, and it wasn't all that good of a run. There was I think a scary movie that like had this kind of pausing thing going on, and like there was also like I went and saw Chronicles in theater, and good God, was that version of that just like the crappiest version. When I actually did see the actual movie, I was just ruined by that experience of of wanting to see this movie again because of the god awful variation that I saw in the theater, which was like, dude, I should have got my money back for some. Like, I should have been like, dude, like this film is freaking awful. Like, you can see in this movie. Like, come on, guys, like get it together. Like, I get there's some movies that I saw way later than I probably should have in a theater, but like that doesn't mean I should be getting a crappy version of a movie. But anyways, so because a lot of times like we just couldn't see a movie right away, so we would have to wait absurdly later than we would have, and then we would just go and see a crappy variation of it. It's like great. So we go on here, and we of course. I'm trying to think of where it was. Um, oh, Hertz is to, of course, have his goons, uh, of course, make their way to, of course, Smith. And so they're running up there trying to get to, of course, Smith. And we had the one funny part where Hertz was going to go, of course, in there first. And they're like, hey, boss, you should probably come, like, behind us and, like, we'll go in there first. And Hertz is like, well, the guy is who is in the rear gets it in the rear, so no. Like, so we go on and have this firefight where, and I'm trying to figure out where Donna is with all this, because I want to try to figure out how exactly do we perfectly have everything for this film. Um, because I'm trying to think of how they go on to take out everybody, and then both the baby and Donna are okay here. Because, like, how exactly does Donna and. Ooh. Anyways, so eventually we get to where we have, of course. Yeah, I'm trying to figure this all out. Smith is going on and going and shooting numerous guards, numerous guys, and so Smith goes on and is to have this one guy go through this, or try to go through this rope to try to uh, make his way down to Smith to try to get the jump on him. But instead, we end up having Smith going and taking this line and racing his way down and blasting all of these guys, blasting all these characters, and eventually going and having Hertz shoot this rope for where uh, Smith is to go on and fall onto the guy who fell that got shot by the zip line, or this zip line, this rope, and so he ends up like crushing this guy's body as he falls. So we end up having Donna and the baby kind of like being set up here. And like, I want to say also there were some parts here where oh, there's a whole like table part also. Yeah, so Smith was running with the baby. There we go. Smith was running with the baby. Donna, I think, was running to another part of this place to get the heck out of there. So we have Smith running with this baby. He goes on to have this table like being shot to try and protect him, and he kind of flips with the table to eventually avoid being shot. And so we have all these like weird tricks done with all these tables in this movie for some odd reason. But so we go on and we continue having eventually Smith just go through and take down all these men, do all this cool stuff. So we end up having both of these characters eventually make their way out of here, and of course Hertz is still alive. So we then go on and have them figure out, because of this baby diaper, that the senator is connected because he needs this bone marrow transplant. And so they go on to this death metal club where they go on to find out that this club bouncer is to take them to this special room where it seems like there's to be these things of ice cream, which is actually a man juice. And so because I guess there's one donor and one donor only for three different women, and which is technically going to be three different kids, but I guess only one out of the three made it. And so this agent is to go on and is to be talking to somebody to say, it's like, well, hey, like we've cleaned up this whole thing, and because this agent was, I guess, supposed to be there to kind of clean up all this mess, to have nobody know that the senator needed this bone marrow transplant. And so we eventually have them figure it out that of course Smith is to realize that the senator is to need this bone marrow transplant, killing all these women off. And so now we have Smith, who's going to hide Donna at this museum in this tank. So the one thing that I forgot about is after Smith was to go on and take out that agent in that bathroom, he was just going to go on and drop this kid on this merry-go-round, thinking that some person would eventually go on to then find this kid. And some woman is like, oh, somebody had dropped their child there, very loudly and absurdly, and not all quite that well acted, but it is what it is. For her all of a sudden to get shot and fell over, and then Hertz is trying to go after the child, and so we have Smith going on and shooting the merry-go-round to where it perfectly starts to spin so Hertz does not shoot this baby. So we go on now and we have Smith, who is eventually going to grab this baby while the merry-go-round is spinning, and so Hertz cannot shoot the baby because he's trying to, he can't exactly figure out how to shoot this merry-go-round and with this baby on it. So now we transition to have Smith go on to this Hammerson's company. And so Hertz is to make his way to this Hammerson's company. to go on and have this Hammerson guy who is absurdly way too affectionate to his dog. To where like this guy is like, oh, I love you, dog, and like the dog is like licking all over this guy's mouth, and like we have Hammerson who's kind of like rolling his dog over so that way he's like scratching him on his like belly and like absurdly affectionate to this dog throughout all these scenes. So we go on, and of course we have Hertz who is coming here, and like Smith has gone on to uh, knock out this one security guard who is going and sipping his drink, and he's like, ah, and so Smith has to take this guy out because he hates crap like that, and so Smith goes on and takes the cup, and he's like, ah, like mocking the guy for just having that crappy way of doing things. And like I find it hilarious that Smith is going after people that are just have these kind of like horrible like way of which that they go on and like drink drinks because it's a freaking, I would call it annoying too. Hence why I would try to avoid to be like an annoyance if I just so happen to be like kind of getting the end of some kind of drink and it's just like, and it's just like, come on, like I want to get the rest of this. So because I want to have my money be worth. Like especially when you go and like you have an icy, and like once you get towards the kind of the end of the icy, and now it's just that kind of like slush at the end there that you can't just easily get through a straw, and you kind of have to just kind of pop, like hit it on the bottom of the cup, and then you have to kind of like try to like smack the cup against your mouth to just kind of push that stuff down there so you can kind of like consume it, and it just becomes like a whole freaking ordeal and a hassle to just get a freaking icy. God, do I hate that garbage. That's when I want to just be like, you know what, like I would just love it if we like if there wasn't that like icy part at the bottom, that crap part where like you could have come up with a way to just easily take that whole bottom icy part, or I wish there would be like a cup specifically where it would just be like to get that freaking bottom crap that I hate because it sucks. So back at the hammer, I'm doing so many side stories here. I apologize, but it's fun. And I know this is an hour and a half movie, and I'm almost like I'm hoping to get this done in an hour and a half or less. So we go on, and we of course have Smith who's going through this Hammerson's company, and so Hertz is mentioning about some gun champion that eventually got to eventually to be scooped by Black Ops, immediately having us naturally assume that the guy he's probably talking about is Smith, so that way we can justify how skilled Smith possibly is here. So while Hertz and while Hammerson are talking here, we just start having, of course, in the weirdest way, Smith is starting to rig all of these like gun traps, and it's coming off to look like the Home Alone set, like towards like a decent part of this film. So all of a sudden, we eventually have it where Smith is to present his presence to Hertz and Hammerson, and so we now end up having going on where Hertz is to bring up more goons, and Hammerson is have, of course, more goons, and so we have these goons coming through these aisles, and so now we just have consistently where Smith is kind of pulling these levels or these levers, these like string levers, and all these guns are going off. And so we have all these like trick gun aisle things where he's just kind of waiting for all these guys to come through these aisles so we can shoot them up. So we eventually have a cluster of guys all going down through one part of this aisle, and so weirdly we have Smith who kind of takes this one string thing and goes and starts like pressing this string thing and just kind of backing and forthing it and like shooting all these guys up. So eventually Smith is to go on and take this one carrot and ram it into this one gun, chucking it at both Hertz and Hammerson so they won't fire at him. And so Smith eventually is to make his way out of this place. So just so Smith can be right about both Hertz and Hammerson being connected here and trying to put the pieces together. So we also have a moment where both Smith and Donna were going on to this hotel room and they were waiting things out. And so Smith was going on after they've kind of figured out what all is going on. Smith is to go on and try to call this one news network, but he's like, you know what I hate? Like, I hate it when some guy is to call one person to hope that that one person is going to help him out, for that person to just get screwed by that one person. And like in those old action movies where you call that one guy and then that one guy ends up being the villain of this story. So Smith went on and called a plethora of people, and that's of course when both Smith and Donna are to be in the throes of passion. And because Donna is to tell Smith about how she had lost her child and how it was a newborn and she had lost this child because Smith evidently didn't care about this story. So, because he didn't bother to ask. So, while eventually they're in the throes of passion, and now we have Smith and we have Donna all of a sudden be in the midst of this fight, because all these guys in these like get-ups are coming in there, and so Smith is now picking up Donna and like fighting these guys while they're still banging it out. And so like Donna is going on and just moaning and so on and so forth, moaning away. And so Smith is going on and just like firing off and murdering all these guys, hiding behind this door while these guys are still coming in. And Smith is just kind of going on and murdering all these guys. And so at the end of this, we have Smith who's telling Donna, it's like, that's how you blow a load. It's just like, good God. Like, so we have supposedly, after Smith is to leave from the Hammerson's company, we have him with a baby, and so now Smith is to have this baby, and he's running off, putting this baby in this car, and so now we have it where there's this huge whole massive van with all of these goons inside of it, and so it gets to the point where now Smith is to kind of drop his gun in the back seat, and so now he has to grab it with this carrot. We also had the one moment, and I want to kind of briefly bring this up, like, because it's kind of funny, where when Smith is to meet Hertz in Donna's room, he ends up saying like, "What's up, Doc?" And so Hertz is like, "You wascally rabbit." like kind of doing this whole Looney Tunes bit, which I completely forgot about, and now I can go back into it and just say that. There's gonna be a severe roundabout way of reviewing this film, and I apologize, but this movie is freaking hilarious. This movie is fun. I enjoy it, and some people may not even watch the whole spoiler part of this, but if you do, thank you, because I have fun watching a movie like this. It's real fun. So Hammerson, or so the Hammerson or Hertz goons are chasing after Smith. It gets to the point where like Smith is like flipping his car, and all of a sudden the baby is to fall out of the car, and so Smith is to now have to go and shoot, not only shoot this one van to go and uh, or shoot this one vehicle and take out his car door so that way he can go and grab this gun, but then he has to turn around and then drive really quickly so he can go and try to pick up this baby with his door not being on, like his door. That's why I wanted to like pre set this up. So we have it instead where Hertz and his men are going and running over this baby, and we're like, oh my god, this is a horrible situation. Smith is having this baby. But then we realize that the baby is actually fake, because we still have to remember that Donna is to have the child in the tank, and we've already kind of set that up, as well as the moment where Smith was to go on and have this one mother spanking her child in this museum, and Smith is like, well, how would you like it if you got spanked? And so like Smith starts spanking this woman, and she's like, oh, oh. He's like, how do you like that? And all of a sudden the guard is like, hey, stop that. And so Smith punches this guy out and freaking walks away, and like the mom is telling the kid, it's like, that's not funny. It's like, so like I guess that's another thing that Smith hates of like a mother, like in public disciplining her child by spanking him. So now that the baby's fake, we of course, yeah, the whole museum thing, and so we now forcibly have it where Hertz is eventually going to get to Smith. It's a inevitable thing. And so Smith is picking up Donna and the baby, and he's telling her where to go, but he's not going to have her, like, so he's basically telling her to go on this like bus tour of a thing, but he doesn't want to know exactly where she's going to stop, so that way Smith doesn't know exactly where she is and where this baby is. And so Donna and this baby are going on this bus ride, and so Smith is to, of course, get caught by these men, because Smith is to go on and go to meet this senator, and Smith, I guess, had reached out to the senator by reaching out to this agent, and this agent's like, hey man, we're on the same side. And so Smith is like, okay, yeah, I'll see which side you're really on. So Smith goes and sees this senator, and Smith is saying like, wow, like you look a lot better on TV. And the guy is like, well, that's with a ton of makeup, and Smith is like, well, yeah, I'm sure a lot of morphine too. So the senator is to go on and say, it's like, well, hey, like, like, you're my hero, and like, I appreciate you coming to me with this, and yada yada yada. But we end up finding out that the senator is still to technically be the bad guy here, because Hertz wasn't going and trying to stop the senator from getting this child. They were working together, because the senator was, of course, to go on to work with Hertz to have them be able to basically get away with murder and do whatever they want by going to a deer hunting place and go in there with a Uzi and kind of just take down and kill and whatever and do whatever they want, however they want. So we now have Smith, who is going on and taking the senator and holding him hostage. And he's going underneath here to have the senator being held to this one spot where they're trying to open this door. But the senator is now, like, kind of, his body is there tied up. And so Smith goes and shoots the senator in the head. And so now we have Smith, who goes and puts on this parachute and is to parachute himself out of the plane. And so we have Hertz that goes and shoots this one door, but then, like, he's having trouble, like, getting it open because of the senator's body. So, but we go on and have these villainous guys go after Smith with this parachute. And so now we end up having it forcibly where, like, we have this this gunfight in midair. This parachute skydiving gunfight of a thing, which I'm like, man, if I go into, like, Saints Row 3, like, there's a lot of, like, shoot 'em up that feels to be in that game, but I can thoroughly enjoy it and have fun with it. Like, oh yeah, this is like shoot 'em up. So we go on and we have Smith going and killing all these guys in midair, and then eventually he is to fight the agent in midair also, and he kind of parachutes and blinds this guy, but then eventually shoves this agent into this helicopter that's, I guess, like, kind of nearby, so that way he gets chopped up by this helicopter, because Smith is just running out of bullets at this point. So, and he ends up getting shot in the arm at one point also. Kind of, you know, he had to use, like, a guy as a body shield for a guy to run out of bullets. So Smith eventually parachutes and makes his way down to the ground. But eventually what is to be forced to be happening here is we do have it where Hertz is to eventually go on and get Smith and now have him being held hostage, where we now have Hertz going and snapping off Smith's fingers, and we have it where Hertz is going on and rattling off this story of Smith, where supposedly his wife and child were at some fast food restaurant, and there was to be these gunmen that came in while this family was eating their favorite chicken McNuggets, and like this whole elaborate story that there's probably no way where that's actually true. And so I guess we have these guys who are robbing this store who are also gunning these family members down. And So when Hertz is to go and start snapping off the fingers of Smith, we eventually have it where like he's telling him now all these kind of random stories about who he really is, trying to figure out who he really is, and like snapping off his middle fingers first so he won't flip the bird anymore. So eventually we finally have where Hertz is to have this scalpel as we just kind of look around at all these like taxidermy like animals. And so when Hertz is going to scalpel Smith in the eye, we eventually have Smith kind of now headbutting uh, Hertz and eventually having the scalpel stuck in his head. And then he like stabs the scalpel to eventually start stabbing all these random guys, and then eventually getting a gun away from them, and is to just start shooting all these guys and killing all these guys. So, but he's like struggling to shoot all of them. So we also end up having the one line where uh, when uh, when Hertz and Hammerson were having an exchange at that one gun factory, he's saying it's like, well, hey, are you like a pussy with a gun in his hand, or not? And so Hertz is just like, no, like I'm an action star with a pussy in my hand. So we go on and we have Smith, who seems to have like a real trouble firing off these guns or firing off these bullets. And so eventually what has to happen here is that Smith goes and starts like shooting up Hertz, but Hertz is still kicking, still going, still whatever. And so Smith goes on and is to have all these bullets in his hand to have them fire off via this fire, where he's kind of burning the bullets nearby so they can go and explode off and hit Hertz so he can finally die here. And so Hertz, of course, is to die, but before he does, he ends up going and calling his wife, and evidently his wife is leaving him. So we go on and we have Smith, who is to go on, and everyone is now dead. And so Smith is now finding a doctor somewhere that can kind of refix all of his fingers. And so now we have Smith go on through this bus tour to eventually go on and figure out that Donna is working at some like Queen Christmas cream, some ice cream place, and all of a sudden Donna is to be talking to her baby and saying like, "Hey, I have a shift coming, and like just be here, and I'll be there for you," and kind of blah 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 blah. So Smith all of a sudden realizes that's Donna, and so Smith is going like, "Hey, Oliver." So because they end up calling him Oliver Twist because Smith was to only like that book, and so that's why they end up calling him Oliver Twist. So Smith goes on and is to, of course, see Donna working at this place, and then she goes ahead and drops all this ice cream because she's like, "Oh, like you finally arrived," and so they hug one another, embrace. All of a sudden, to just have three guys try and rob this joint, and so now we end up having it, of course, where Smith doesn't have a gun, but he'll get one. So all he really has is a carrot, and that's good enough. So Smith goes on and is to take one of the guns from these one of these men, and he's to take this carrot and use it as this trigger. So we go on and have, of course, Smith saying all the stuff that he hates about these guys, where this kind of really goofy looking earring, this guy with these sandals with these horrible toes and these horrible feet. And I think, God, what was the problem with the other guy? I don't remember. But like he had to die anyways, and there was one guy who was slurping up this sundae, and so he also had to like get his glass broken so he could stop slurping away. So we go on and have Smith go and magically take these guys all out, trigger some kind of event with this guy being shot multiple times for him to shoot this guy in the foot. And so Smith takes out all these goons and is to eventually just be like, man, like you can't have a day without you like killing people, can you? So that's the way, of course, the movie just ends. I kind of sped it up to eventually get us to the meat and potatoes of all this. Just because really I want to kind of wrap this up before we get to the hour and 30-minute mark, which is basically this film. So I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.